I just found out my wife cheated with her boss, took half our joint savings 350, then manipulated me into signing a property settlement, only to discover she's secretly been planning to claim our family home worth $500, $0 to cover her affair debts. Now I don't know if I'll lose everything. I never thought I'd be the guy to get like this, but here I am, sitting in my living room trying to make sense of everything I just found out. The craziest part. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted for over 10 years, was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. And not just that, she took half our savings, $350, $0, and manipulated me into signing a property settlement, only to turn around and plan to claim our family home worth $500,000 to cover her debts. It's like I was living in some bad movie, only this is real life, and I feel like I've been punched so hard I'm seeing stars. We had what I thought was a good life. We married young, had 2 kids and Lily, and built a house I thought was our forever home. We weren't rich, but we managed, was always a little bitchy, but I figured it was just her personality. She was ambitious, sometimes manipulative, but she loved her family, or so I thought. Things started getting weird about 6 months ago. She became more distant, secretive on her phone, always brushing me off when I asked what was wrong. She'd get defensive if I pressed her, say I was paranoid or insecure. I didn't want to believe she was cheating, but the signs were piling up. Then last week, I noticed her phone kept getting messages late at night. She'd quickly hide the screen when I came into the room. One night, I decided to check her messages when she was in the shower. I didn't expect much, but what I found made my stomach drop. There were texts from Mark, her boss, talking about meeting up for secret work and getting away from the stress. Their exchanges were flirty, with her calling him babe and him replying with suggestive stuff. I saw pictures, screenshots of hotel rooms, selfies of her in bed, half-dressed. I felt numb. That's when I knew for sure she'd been lying and hiding this from me. I did confront her right away. Instead, I started digging. I checked bank accounts, looked at their call logs, and found she'd been withdrawing money, large sums, over the past few months. Half of our savings gone. I couldn't believe it. I had worked so hard for that money, and she just took it, probably to pay off Mark or cover her expenses for this affair. It was like my entire life was crumbling around me. I felt betrayed, furious, and honestly, stupid for not seeing it sooner. When I finally sat her down and showed her the evidence, his face twisted into this snide, bitchy expression. She everything at first said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that her phone was just work stuff, but I had the proof. The texts, the bank statements. I told her I knew about Mark, about the money, about everything. Her reaction, she started crying, but not because she was sorry. No, she was angry, telling me I was ruining her career, that I was just insecure and jealous. She played the victim, as if I was the one who betrayed her. She kept saying she loved me, but I didn't believe her anymore. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut a dozen times. I was hurt, yes, but mostly I was furious. How could she do this? How could she lie for so long, manipulate me into signing that property settlement, and then plan to take our house? I'd always thought we were solid, that we had a partnership. Turns out I was just a fool. I felt betrayed, not just by her actions, but by the entire life I thought we had. It was a moment of clarity, one that made me realize I had to make some serious decisions about what comes next. After I confronted, things didn't get easier. She continued to deny everything at first, even as I threw the proof on the table: screenshots, bank statements, call logs. She just scoffed, said I was overreacting, that Mark meant nothing, that she was just stressed from work and I was jealous. That was her go-to lie. You're just insecure, or you don't trust me. But I saw through it. How could I not? She'd been sneaking around, hiding her phone, withdrawing money. Everything pointed to something she didn't want me to see. The worst part was how she twisted it around. She accused me of being controlling, said I was paranoid, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She kept saying she loved me, that I was the only one for her. But her actions told a different story. I could see her eyes, cold, calculating, like she was already planning her escape. And I knew she'd been planning to leave me with nothing, especially after I found out she'd already started talking to lawyers about the house. That's when I decided I couldn't just sit there and be manipulated anymore. I started to think about how to get ahead of her, how to protect myself and what was left of my life. I couldn't let her walk away with our house, our savings, everything we built. I started calling a lawyer, trying to understand what my rights were. The lawyer told me about the property settlement, how we could split the assets, but only if I had proof of her misconduct. That's when I realized I had to act fast. I also started digging into her finances more. Turns out she'd been secretly paying Mark for consulting work using our joint account. She'd hidden hundreds of thousands in offshore accounts, and I had no idea. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. It made me sick to think how she'd lied to my face, manipulated me to sign papers, and now she was trying to take everything I thought was ours. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, pretending to be the loving wife, the caring mother. She'd come home, cook dinner, kiss the kids good night, all while I was just simmering with rage inside. The more I found out, the more I realized how much she'd lied. She told me she was working late, going to networking events, but I knew better now. She was with Mark, probably screwing him in some hotel, or worse, planning her next move to screw me over. I felt like I was in some horrible nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The betrayal was so deep I didn't know if I'd ever trust anyone again. I started questioning everything, our past, her love, my own judgment. How could she do this to me? To our kids? I kept thinking about the money she took, how she manipulated me into signing that property settlement, how she's probably already got her eye on the house, planning to claim it as hers once she's finished with her affair debts. All this chaos made me realize I had to get my head straight. I couldn't just react emotionally. I needed a plan. I decided I'd fight for what's mine, for the house, for the savings, for my dignity. I was furious, yes, but I also knew I had to be smart. I started documenting everything, saving texts, taking screenshots, keeping track of her withdrawals and her meetings with her lawyer. I knew she was slippery, a liar, and she'd try to manipulate the system. But I wasn't going down without a fight. It's a mess now, a total disaster. I don't even know who she is anymore. Used to be the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew. Now she's just a stranger, a cheat, a liar. And I'm left trying to pick up the pieces of what's left of my life, wondering how I got here and how I'm going to move forward from this betrayal. I spent the next few days in a fog of anger, sadness, and determination. I couldn't believe how easily had played me. She was bitchy, manipulative, and completely devoid of remorse. Every time I looked at her, I saw this cold, calculating woman who'd been screwing her boss behind my back for months. The worst part was how she kept lying, spinning stories about how nothing was going on, how she was just stressed and overwhelmed. She insisted Mark was just a friend, that she'd never cheat on me. But I knew better now. The texts, the withdrawals, her secret meetings, they all painted a different picture. I decided I couldn't wait around for her to keep lying. I needed to act fast, before she managed to pull off some kind of scam to take everything from under my nose. I called my lawyer, who told me I had a strong case if I could prove her misconduct. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find, screenshots, bank statements, recordings of her calls when I could get them. I also hired a private investigator. I didn't trust her anymore, and I wanted to see just how deep her lies went. Turns out, she'd been sneaking around with Mark in hotel rooms, paying for secret rendezvous with our money. She'd even lied about her whereabouts, claiming she was at work when she was with him. Meanwhile, kept up her act at home, acting like everything was fine. She'd throw tantrums if I questioned her, call me paranoid or insecure. She'd call me crazy for doubting her, as if I was the one doing something wrong. It was infuriating. I felt like I was losing my mind, caught between her lies and my own sense of betrayal. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd always thought I was a good husband, that I provided for her, loved her, and kept our family together. Turns out I was just a fool. One night I caught her in a lie. She was supposed to be at a business dinner, but I saw her sneaking out of the house late at night. I followed her just to see where she was going. She was at a hotel with Mark. I watched from a distance as they went inside. That was the final straw. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to take control of the situation. I sat down that night and drafted a plan. I'd confront her with everything I had, and if she didn't come clean, I'd take legal action. I was done being played. I also started talking to a divorce lawyer about my options. I needed to understand what I was entitled to, especially with the house. Had been manipulating me into signing that property settlement. She'd lied about her finances, about her intentions. Now I knew she was planning to claim the house as her own, to cover her debts to Mark and her other secret expenses. I couldn't let her get away with it. I'd worked hard for that house, and I was determined to keep what was rightfully mine. It was around this time I realized how much this betrayal had shaken me. I wasn't just angry deep down, I felt betrayed on a fundamental level. I trusted her with everything. Our marriage, our future, our kids' stability. And she'd thrown it all away for some affair and a quick cash grab. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? How did I miss the signs? And more importantly, how do I fix this mess now? I knew I had to be strategic, patient, and relentless if I wanted to come out of this with some semblance of justice. The hardest part was knowing I'd likely lose the person I thought was mine. Even now, I can't get the image of her lying to my face, smiling while she was screwing Mark out of my head. That betrayal runs so deep I sometimes wonder if I'll ever fully recover. But I also know I can't let her win. I have to fight for what's mine, our home, our savings, my dignity. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about standing up for myself and not letting her manipulate me into giving her everything. I've got a plan. I just have to see it through. Over the next week, I threw myself into action. I stayed up late every night, poring over every document, every detail I had uncovered. The more I dug, the clearer it became how deeply had planned this whole thing. She'd been secretly funneling money offshore, hiding assets, and lying about her income and expenses. I also found out she'd been talking to a lawyer behind my back, trying to set up a plan to claim the house as her own once. She'd covered her debts to Mark and paid off her other secret expenses. The pieces fit together now, and I realized how much she'd lied to me, how she manipulated the entire situation to her advantage. I met with my lawyer again, and we went over everything. She confirmed I had a strong case, especially with the evidence of her affair and financial misconduct. The lawyer advised me to file for divorce immediately and to seek a court order to freeze her assets. I didn't want her to be able to hide any more money or try to transfer the house out of my name. I felt a mix of relief and rage. Finally, I had a plan to fight back. I was tired of being played for a fool, tired of feeling like I was losing everything I worked for. I knew I had to act fast before she managed to pull some last-minute scam. Meanwhile, kept up her act at home. She'd pout, cry, and throw tantrums when I brought up the divorce, calling me heartless and accusing me of ruining the family. She told the kids I was trying to tear us apart, that I was jealous of her success. It was sickening. She was pretending to be the innocent victim, but I saw through her now. I saw the way she looked at Mark's texts, how she was already planning her escape. It was like watching a predator preparing to strike. One day, I found out from the private investigator that had already started making arrangements to leave the country. She'd booked flights for herself and the kids, claiming she was taking a business trip with them. But I knew better. She was trying to run away before I could stop her, before I could get a court order to freeze her assets. That was the moment I realized I had to act even faster. I called my lawyer, and she told me to file for an emergency injunction to prevent her from leaving with the kids or the money. The shock of that news hit me hard. I never thought she'd go this far. It was like she was willing to destroy everything just to save herself. I felt a terrible mix of anger and helplessness. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd betrayed me on every level. I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to protect my kids, my home, and what was left of my dignity. My entire life was hanging in the balance, and I knew I couldn't let her win. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. The betrayal, the lies, the money lost, the house at risk. I kept thinking about the future, what it would look like if I lost everything, what kind of person had become. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of resolve. This was war, and I was going to fight for what was mine. I'd never gone through anything like this before, but I knew I had to be smart, careful, and relentless. I wasn't about to let her walk away with my life. I'd come too far for that. I also knew I had to prepare my kids for what was coming. They deserved honesty, even if it hurt. I didn't want them growing up thinking betrayal was normal, or that a mother could lie and cheat without consequences. I promised myself that no matter how messy this got, I'd do everything to protect them, to give them stability. This wasn't just about money or property anymore. It was about justice, about making sure couldn't just manipulate her way out of this. I had a long road ahead, but I was ready to walk it. The days that followed were a blur of court dates, lawyer calls, and constant surveillance. Was desperate to maintain her, but I saw through her every move. She was trying to spin stories, manipulate the kids, and buy herself more time. But I had the evidence, and I had the law on my side now. The court granted the emergency injunction to freeze her assets and prevent her from leaving the country with the kids. That was a huge relief, but I knew it was just the beginning. The biggest blow came when I discovered she'd already transferred a significant portion of our joint savings 350 to offshore accounts. She hidden it in a series of shell companies and fake accounts, all set up without my knowledge. That money was supposed to be for the kids' education, for our future, and now it was gone, or at least hidden beyond my reach. It made me feel sick. I'd worked hard for every penny, and she just took it like it was nothing. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was bleeding inside. Meanwhile, the lawyer kept pushing for a quick settlement, trying to get me to sign away my rights to the house. She claimed was trying to protect the kids, but I knew better. She was trying to cover her tracks, hide assets, and get out of paying what she owed. I refused to be bullied or manipulated anymore. I told my lawyer to prepare for a full court hearing. I wanted the judge to see all the evidence, her affair, her lies, her financial misconduct. I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine, even if it meant going to war. The emotional toll was brutal. I was angry, devastated, and exhausted. I loved once, but I couldn't recognize her anymore. She was cold, calculating, and selfish. She'd lied to my face, cheated behind my back, and now she was trying to steal our home and savings. I kept questioning myself. How did I miss the signs? Why did I trust her so much? But there was no point dwelling on the past. I had to focus on the present and protect my future and my kids' future. One of the hardest moments was when tried to turn the kids against me. She told them I was trying to ruin everything, that I was being unfair. She played the victim, as always, but I knew I had to stay strong for them. I explained to and Lily that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and that I was fighting to make sure they'd still have a safe, stable home. I promised I'd do everything I could to keep our family together, but I also told them the truth, that sometimes people make bad choices and it's not their fault. I wanted them to grow up knowing honesty, not lies. As I sat through the court hearings, I realized how much I'd lost, my trust, my sense of security, and maybe even my love for. But I also realized something else. I was not going to let her win. I was determined to see this through, to get back what was stolen, and to make sure she couldn't manipulate her way out of her responsibilities. I knew the fight wasn't over yet, but I felt a strange sense of clarity. This was about more than money or property. It was about standing up for myself and my family. I had to be smart, patient, and relentless. I kept reminding myself that I'd come this far and I wasn't going to back down now. The betrayal was deep, but I wasn't going to let it define me. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, for my children, and for the integrity of my life. Whatever the outcome, I knew I'd never trust again. And honestly, I was okay with that. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to find out who you really are, and I was starting to understand that. The next chapter would be tough, but I was ready to face it head-on. The court day finally arrived, and I remember feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and determination. Everything I'd uncovered, everything I'd fought for, was about to be laid out in front of the judge. Was there, looking nervous but still trying to put on her fake smile, the one she used to use to charm people. She thought she could manipulate her way out of this, just like she had with me for years. But this time it was different. I had the evidence, the truth, and a clear plan. The courtroom was silent as my lawyer presented everything. The proof of her affair, the bank statements showing the hidden offshore accounts, the texts where she called Mark babe, and the evidence that she'd manipulated me into signing the property settlement. I watched her face as the judge listened, and I could see her trying to keep her composure, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew she was cornered. The judge listened carefully, asked questions, and ultimately ruled in my favor on most fronts. The house stayed in my name, and the court ordered her to pay back the stolen money, along with a hefty penalty for hiding assets in her misconduct. As the ruling came down, I felt a huge weight lift. I had fought hard, and justice was beginning to be served. His face was a mix of shock and anger, but there was nothing she could do now. She had lost her leverage, her lies exposed. Watching her leave the courtroom, I realized how much I'd grown through this ordeal. I'd gone from being a naive husband who trusted his wife blindly to someone who fought fiercely for what was rightfully his. I was exhausted, but also proud. I had stood up against betrayal, manipulation, and lies, and I'd won. In the weeks that followed, I worked to rebuild my life. The house was mine again, and I was granted full custody of the kids. Moved out, and I made sure they knew they were loved, safe, and that they didn't have to carry the weight of her betrayal. I felt a strange sense of peace, knowing I'd done everything I could to protect them. The money was still a mess, but I was getting help to recover what I could and to start fresh. Looking back, I realized this was one of the toughest experiences of my life. I lost trust, I lost some of my innocence, but I also found strength I didn't know I had. I learned that sometimes betrayal comes from those you love most, and that the only way to survive it is to stand firm. I wish I could say, I've completely moved on, but the scars are there. Still, I'm grateful for the lessons about honesty, resilience, and the importance of standing up for yourself. If there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's that no matter how deep the betrayal, you don't have to go down with the ship. There's always a way out, always a fight worth fighting. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's hard to rebuild, but not impossible. Protect yourself, stay vigilant, and never let anyone manipulate you into giving up what's yours. Because at the end of the day, your dignity and your future are worth more than any lie or betrayal. I've learned that the hard way, but I'm stronger for it now.